Chapter 9, Amnon and his half-sister Tamar. King David's firstborn son was Amnon. His mother was Ahinoam, a woman from Jezreel. Tamar was David's daughter, and her mother was Maacah, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. Absalom, the third son of David, was Tamar's brother, for they both had the same mother. Therefore, Amnon was a half-brother to Absalom and Tamar. Now, Amnon loved his half-sister, Tamar. However, the love he had for her was not normal. The love he had for his sister was not the type of love a brother would have for his sister, for he was so distressed over her that he became sick. Tamar was a virgin, and it was improper for him to do anything to her. Nevertheless, his friend, whose name was Jonadab the son of Shimei, David's brother, was a very crafty man. He said to Amnon, "Why are you, the king's son, becoming thinner day after day? Will you not tell me?" Amnon said to him, "I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." Jonadab said to him, "Lie down on your bed and pretend to be ill. Then when your father comes to see you, say to him, 'Please let my sister Tamar come and give me food, and prepare the food in my sight, that I may see it and eat it from her hand.'" 2 Samuel 13 verses 1 to 6. Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill, and when his father came to see him, he requested that Tamar be permitted to make him cakes in his sight to eat from her hands. Therefore, David sent for Tamar, and Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, and he was lying down. Tamar made and baked cakes in his sight. She took the pan and placed it out before him, but he refused to eat. Then Amnon said, "Have everyone go out from me." Everyone left. Then Amnon had Tamar to bring the food into his bedroom. She did as he asked. When she had brought them to him to eat, he took hold of her and said to her, "Come lie with me, my sister." She answered him, "No, my brother, do not force me, for no such thing should be done in Israel. Do not do this disgraceful thing. And I, where could I take my shame? And as for you, you would be like one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore, please speak to the king, for he will not withhold me from you." However, Amnon would not heed her voice, and being stronger than she was, he forced her and lay with her. Amnon raped his sister. Afterwards, he hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred with which he had hated her was greater than the love with which he had loved her. Then Amnon said to her, "Arise, be gone." Tamar said to him, "No, indeed. This evil of sending me away is worse than the other that you did to me." However, he would not listen to her. He called his servant who attended him, and said, "Here, put this woman out, away from me, and bolt the door behind her." Tamar was dressed in a robe of many colors, for the king's virgin daughters wore such apparel. The servant put her out and bolted the door behind her. 2 Samuel 13 verses 1 to 18. Tamar put ashes on her head, tore her robe of many colors that she wore, and laid her hand on her head and went away crying bitterly. Absalom, her brother, said to her, "Has Amnon your brother been with you? Now hold your peace, my sister. He is your brother, do not take this thing to heart." Therefore, Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. 2 Samuel 13 verses 1 to 9, 20. Absalom murders Amnon. 2 years had passed since the forced sexual abuse against Tamar by Amnon. Absalom had sheep shearers in Baal Hazor, which is near Ephraim. He invited all the king's sons, that is, all David's sons. Then Absalom came to the king and said, "Kindly note, your servant has sheep shearers, please, let the king and his servants' sons go with your servant, me." But David said to Absalom, "No, my son, let not all go now, lest we be a burden to you." Then Absalom urged his father David, but he would not go, and David blessed him. Then Absalom said, "If not, please let my brother Amnon go with us." David immediately asked, "Why should he go with you?" But Absalom urged him, so David let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. 2 Samuel 13 verses 23 to 27. Absalom had commanded his servants to strike Amnon and kill him when Amnon became drunk. He commanded them not to be afraid, but courageous and valiant. Therefore, the servants of Absalom did to Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then the rest of the king's sons rose, and each one got on his mule and fled. While they were on the way, the news came to David saying, "Absalom has killed all the king's sons, and not one of them is left." Therefore David arose, tore his garments, and lay on the ground, and all the servants stood by with their clothes torn. Then Jonadab, that started the beginning of this trouble, said, "Let not my lord suppose they have killed all the young men, the king's sons, for only Amnon is dead. For by the command of Absalom this has been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar to lie with him. Now therefore, let not my lord the king take the thing to his heart, to think that all the king's sons are dead. For only Amnon is dead." Then Absalom fled. And the young man who was keeping watch lifted his eyes and looked, and there many people were coming from the road on the hillside behind him. Then Jonadab said to the king, "Look, the king's sons are coming, as your servant said, so it is." Therefore it was, as soon as he had finished speaking, that the king's sons indeed came, and they lifted up their voice and wept. Also, the king and all his servants wept very bitterly. However, Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Ammihud, king of Geshur. He went to the home of his mother, and David mourned for his son every day. Therefore Absalom fled and went to Geshur, in the land of Syria, and was there 3 years. King David longed to go to Absalom, for he had been comforted concerning Amnon, because he was dead. 2 Samuel 13 verses 28 to 39. Absalom commits treason. After King David forgave his son Absalom, Absalom provided himself with chariots and horses, and he had 50 men to run before him. He would rise early and stand beside the way to the gate. Whenever anyone who had a lawsuit came to the king for a decision, Absalom would call and suggest that there was no deputy to the king to hear his or her case. And if he were made judge in the land, everyone who had any suit or cause would be able to come to him, then he would give justice. This pleased the people, for whenever anyone came near, they bowed down to him that he would put out his hand, and they would kiss him. Therefore Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. Absalom knew how to use people to his own advantage. It was by gaining influence through personal charm, deception, and promises that Absalom was able to gain the sympathy and support of the people. 40 years had passed, and Absalom then said to the king, his father, "Please, let me go to Hebron and pay the vow which I made to the Lord. For your servant took a vow while I dwelt at Geshur in Syria, saying, 'If the Lord indeed brings me back to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord.'" King David said to Absalom, "Go in peace." 2 Samuel 15 verses 1 to 8. Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, "As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you will say, 'Absalom reigns in Hebron.'" And with Absalom went 200 men invited from Jerusalem, and they went along innocently and did not know anything. Then Absalom sent for Ahithophel the Gilonite, David's counselor, from his city from Gilo, while he offered sacrifices. Then the conspiracy grew strong, for the people with Absalom continually increased in number. 2 Samuel 15 verses 9 to 12. King David flee from Absalom. A messenger came to David telling him that Absalom had turned the hearts of the men of Israel to him. David said to all his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, "Let us arise and flee, or we will not escape from Absalom. Make haste to depart, lest he overtake us, and strike the city with the edge of the sword." The servants said to the king, "We are your servants, ready to do whatever my lord the king commands." David went out with all his household, but he left 10 women who were his concubines, to keep the house. King David went out with all the people after him, and stopped at the outskirts. Then all the servants passed before him, and all the Cherethites and Pelethites, who were mercenaries from other nations, and the Gittites, 600 men who had followed him from Gath, who were loyal to him for years, passed before him. Ittai answered the king and said, "As the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, surely in whatever place my lord the king will be, whether in death or life, even there also your servant will be." Therefore David told him to go and cross over the brook Kidron. Ittai the Gittite, all his men, and all the little ones who were with him crossed over. Then all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people crossed over. The king himself also crossed over the brook Kidron, and all the people crossed over toward the way of the wilderness, the road leading through the wilderness of Judah to Jericho and down to the fords, an easy passage across of the Jordan River. Zadok the priest and all the Levites with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of God, were also with them. And they set down the ark of God, and Abiathar went up until all the people had finished crossing over from the city. Then the king said to Zadok, "Carry the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and show me both it and his dwelling place. But if he says thus, 'I have no delight in you, here I am,' let him do to me as seems good to him." The king also said to Zadok the priest, "Are you not a seer? Return to the city in peace, and your 2 sons with you, Ahimaaz your son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I will wait in the plains of the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me." Therefore Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark of God back to Jerusalem. They remained there to gather information for David by receiving a message from the Lord and getting news from the enemy camp. 2 Samuel 15 verses 13 to 29. David went up by the ascent of the Mount of Olives, and wept as he went up, and he had his head covered and went barefoot. All the people who were with him covered their heads and went up weeping. Then someone told David that Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. Then David said, "O Lord, I pray, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness." Ahithophel was one of David's counselors who turned away from him to assist his son Absalom in his revolt. David had come to the top of the mountain, where he worshipped God. There was Hushai the Archite coming to meet him with his robe torn and dust on his head. Hushai was a friend and wise counselor of King David. David said to him, "If you go on with me, then you will become a burden to me. But if you return to the city, and say to Absalom, 'I will be your servant, O king, as I was your father's servant previously, so I will now also be your servant,' then you may defeat the counsel of Ahithophel for me. And do not have Zadok and Abiathar the priests with you there? Therefore it will be that whatever you hear from the king's house, you will tell to Zadok and Abiathar the priests with you there." Indeed, they had there with them 2 sons, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abiathar's son, and by them you will send me everything you hear. Therefore Hushai, David's friend, went into the city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem. 2 Samuel 15 verses 30 to 37. When David was a little past the top of the mountains, there was Ziba the servant of Mephibosheth, who met him with a couple of saddled donkeys, and on them 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 summer fruits, and a skin of wine. And David said to Ziba, "What do you mean to do with these?" Ziba, who had been a servant of King Saul, and chosen by David to work the land of Mephibosheth, said, "The donkeys are for the king's household to ride on, the bread and summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine for those who are faint in the wilderness to drink." Then the king said, "And where is your master's son?" David was asking him where was Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth was the son of Jonathan and grandson of Saul. He was only 5 years old when his father, Jonathan, and his grandfather Saul died in the battle of Jezreel on Mount Gilboa. He had been treated with kindness by David, and David restored to him the estates of Saul, appointed servants to work the land for him, and gave him a place at the royal table to sit before him daily. 2 Samuel 4 verse 4, 9:7-13. Ziba said to David, the king, indeed Mephibosheth is staying in Jerusalem, for he said, today the house of Israel will restore the kingdom of my father to me. Ziba was lying. Mephibosheth did not say that. Ziba made it seem that Mephibosheth was rebelling against the one who gave him a seat at his table. Therefore, by Ziba's deception, it led David to reward him all of Saul's property. The land was taken away from Mephibosheth and given to him. David said to Ziba, here, all that belongs to Mephibosheth is yours. And Ziba said, I humbly bow before you, that I may find favor in your sight, my lord, O king. 2 Samuel 16 verses 1-4. When Absalom went up against David, his father, Ziba falsely accused Mephibosheth of being disloyal to David. David did believe Ziba's story at first, and he took Saul's property away from Mephibosheth and gave it to Ziba. When David returns to Jerusalem, Mephibosheth will clear himself and David will offer him half of Saul's estates this time, but Mephibosheth will refuse it. 2 Samuel 19 verses 24-30. Shimei cursed King David. Shimei is the son of Gera of Saul's family and from the tribe of Benjamin. When King David came to Bahurim, the place near Jerusalem, east of the Mount of Olives, Shimei came out cursing continuously at him. Shimei threw stones at him and all the servants of David. All the people and all the mighty men were on David's right hand and on his left. Also, Shimei said this when he cursed, come out. You bloodthirsty man, you rogue, meaning worthless and useless person. The Lord has brought upon you all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose place you have reigned, and the Lord has delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom your son. Therefore, now you are caught in your own evil, because you are a bloodthirsty man. We now can see how Absalom had taken the hearts of the people. The family of Saul became bitter when Saul was killed in battle and David had taken the throne from the family of Saul. Therefore, it was easy to see that Absalom, going up against his father, was able to accomplish what he set out to do. Then Abishai the son of Zeruiah said to David, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Please, let me go over and take off his head. However, King David said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? So let him curse, because the Lord has said to him, curse David, who then will say, why have you done so? Then David said to Abishai and all his servants, see how my son who came from my own body seeks my life. How much more now may this Benjamite? Let him alone, and let him curse, for so the Lord has ordered him. It may be that the Lord will look on my affliction, and that the Lord will repay me with good for his cursing this day. And as David and his men went along the road, Shimei went along the hillside opposite him and cursed as he went, threw stones at him and kicked up dust. Now the king and all the people who were with him became weary, so they refreshed themselves there. 2 Samuel 16 verses 1-14. David was fleeing from his own son, and if his own son showed him no loyalty, why would he expect anyone else to? What Shimei was doing was not important to him. David may have thought that Shimei was part of the adversary the Lord had raised up for the sin he committed with Bathsheba and the murder of her husband, Uriah. Ahithophel gives Absalom advice. Meanwhile Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel was with him. Therefore, it was, when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, came to Absalom that he said to Absalom, long live the king! Long live the king! Therefore Absalom said to Hushai, "Is this your loyalty to your friend? Why did you not go with your friend?" Absalom was speaking about Hushai, his friend, to David. Hushai said to Absalom, "No, but whom the Lord and this people and all the men of Israel choose, his I will be, and with him I will remain." Hushai did clarify to whom he would be loyal to, because he said to whom the Lord will choose. The Lord did not choose Absalom to be king, therefore Hushai kept his loyalty to his friend, King David. However, Absalom did not catch on to this statement. Hushai went on to say, "Furthermore, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son? As I have served in your father's presence, so will I be in your presence?" Then Absalom said to Ahithophel, "Give advice as to what we should do." Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Go into your father's concubines, whom he has left to keep the house, and all Israel will hear that you are abhorred by your father. Then the hands of all who are with you will be strong." If Absalom took Ahithophel's advice, it would be an act equivalent to claiming the throne. Therefore, they pitched a tent for Absalom on the top of the house, and Absalom went into his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. Now the advice of Ahithophel, which he gave in those days, was as if one had inquired at the oracle of God. So was all the advice of Ahithophel both with David and with Absalom. 2 Samuel 16 verses 15 to 23. Moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Now let me choose 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue David tonight. I will come upon him while he is weary and weak, and make him afraid. And all the people who are with him will flee, and I will strike only the king. Then I will bring back all the people to you. When all return, except the man whom you seek, all the people will be at peace." Therefore, the saying pleased Absalom and all the elders of Israel. 2 Samuel 17 verses 1 to 4. Absalom's advice from Hushai. Absalom said, "Now call Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear what he says too." When Hushai came to Absalom, Absalom spoke to him, saying, "Ahithophel has spoken in this manner. Should we do as he says? If not, speak up." So Hushai said to Absalom, "The advice that Ahithophel has given is not good at this time. For, said Hushai, you know your father and his men, that they are mighty men, and they are enraged in their minds, like a bear robbed of her cubs in the field, and your father is a man of war, and will not camp with the people. Surely, by now he is hidden in some pit, or in some other place. And it will be, when some of them are overthrown at the first, that whoever hears it will say, there is a slaughter among the people who follow Absalom, and even he who is valiant, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will melt completely. For all Israel knows that your father is a mighty man, and those who are with him are valiant men. Therefore, I advise that all Israel be fully gathered to you, from Dan to Beersheba, like the sand that is by the sea for multitude, and that you go to battle in person. So, we will come upon him in some place where he may be found, and we will fall on him as the dew falls on the ground. And of him and all the men who are with him there will not be left so much as on. Moreover, if he has withdrawn into a city, then all Israel will bring ropes to that city, and we will pull it into the river, until there is not one small stone found there." After Hushai gave his advice, Absalom and all the men of Israel said, "The advice of Hushai the Archite is better than the advice of Ahithophel." The Lord had purposed to defeat the good advice of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord might bring disaster on Absalom. 2 Samuel 17 verses 5 to 15. Hushai warns David of the plot. Hushai said to Zadok and Abiathar the priests, "Ahithophel advised Absalom and the elders of Israel, and I have advised. Now therefore, send quickly and tell David, saying, do not spend this night in the plains of the wilderness, but speedily cross over, lest the king and all the people who are with him be swallowed up." Now Jonathan, son of Abiathar, a high priest, and Ahimaaz son of Zadok, who kept David informed of Absalom's revolt, stayed at En-Rogel, for they dared not be seen coming into the city. So a female servant would come and tell them, and they would go and tell King David. Nevertheless, a lad saw them, and told Absalom. Therefore Jonathan and Ahimaaz went away quickly and came to a man's house in Bahurim, who had a well in his court, and they went down into it. Then the woman took and spread a covering over the well's mouth, and spread ground grain on it, and the thing was not known. And when Absalom's servants came to the woman at the house, they said, Where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan? The women said to them, They have gone over the water brook. When the servants had searched and could not find them, they returned to Jerusalem. When the men had left, Jonathan and Ahimaaz came up out of the well and went and told David, and said to him, Arise and cross over the water quickly, for Ahithophel has advised against you. Therefore David and all the people who were with him arose and crossed over the Jordan. That morning, by daylight, not one of them was left who had not gone over the Jordan. Now when Ahithophel saw that his advice was not followed, he saddled a donkey, and arose and went home to his house, to his city. Then he put his household in order, and hanged himself, and died, and he was buried in his father's tomb. Here we see a case of suicide in the Old Testament. Ahithophel saw that his advice was not taken. If he was trying to gain popularity to bring success to Absalom, it backfired. He probably realized when they did not take his advice, he knew Absalom was not going to win, and he, being a disloyal servant to King David, knew that if he lived, David would put him to death anyway. Therefore, he put his household in order, and hanged himself. 2 Samuel 17 verses 15 to 23. After crossing the Jordan, David went to Mahanaim, east of the Jordan and north of the Jabbok. Absalom also crossed over the Jordan, he and all the men of Israel with him. Then he made Amasa, David's nephew, captain of the army instead of Joab. Amasa was Joab's cousin. Amasa was the son of Jithra, an Israelite, who had gone into Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, sister of Zeruiah, Joab's mother. The men of Israel and Absalom encamped in the land of Gilead. Now it happened, when David arrived in the fortified city of Mahanaim, he was greatly received. Shobi the son of Nahash from Rabbah of the people of Ammon, Machir the son of Ammiel from Lo-debar, and Barzillai the Gileadite from Rogelim, brought to David and the people who were with him food to eat. They brought beds and basins, earthen vessels and wheat, barley and flour, parched grain and beans, lentils and parched seeds, honey and curds, sheep and cheese of the herd, for they said, The people are hungry, weary, and thirsty in the wilderness. 2 Samuel 17 verses 24 to 29. Joab kills Absalom. In preparing for battle against the men of Israel, David numbered the people who were with him, and he set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. He sent out 1/3 of the people under the hands of Joab, 1/3 under Abishai, and 1/3 under Ittai, the Gittite. David was going out to battle with them, but the people did not want him to go, and they persuaded him not to go for his own protection. 2 Samuel 18 verses 1 to 4. All the people went out by hundreds and by thousands, and the king stood beside the gate. David commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai to deal gently for his sake with his son Absalom. All the people heard when the king gave all the captains orders concerning Absalom. 2 Samuel 18 verse 5. The people went out into the field of battle against Israel. The battle took place in the woods of Ephraim, and the people of Israel were defeated there before the servants of David. A great slaughter of 20,000 took place that day. The battle there was scattered over the whole countryside, and the woods devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. 2 Samuel 18 verses 6 to 8. Absalom met the servants of David. He was riding a mule that went under a thick bough of a terebinth tree, and Absalom's head was caught in the tree. The mule he was riding kept going, and he was left there hanging in the tree. A man saw this and told Joab he saw Absalom hanging in the tree. However, Joab was not happy to hear that the man allowed Absalom to live, for he asked him, "Why did you not strike him there to the ground? I would have given you 10 shekels of silver and a belt." Nevertheless, the man said to Joab, "Though I was to receive 1,000 shekels of silver, I would not raise my hand against the king's son. We had heard the king command you, Abishai and Ittai, to beware lest anyone touch the young man Absalom. Otherwise, I would have dealt falsely against my own life. There is nothing hidden from the king, and you, yourself, would have set yourself against me." Then Joab said, "I cannot linger with you." Therefore, he took 3 spears in his hand and thrust them through Absalom's heart, while he was still alive in the midst of the terebinth tree. 10 young men who bore Joab's armor surrounded Absalom, and struck and killed him. 2 Samuel 18 verses 9 to 15. Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing Israel. He held back the people. They took Absalom, cast him into a large pit in the woods, and laid a very large heap of stones over him. Then all Israel fled, everyone to his tent. 2 Samuel 18 verses 16 and 17. Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, wanted to take the news to David to say how the Lord had avenged him of his enemies. However, Joab told him not to take the news to him that day, but to wait until another day to take the news, because his son was dead. But the same day, Joab told the Hushai to go and tell King David what he had seen. Ahimaaz said again to Joab, "But whatever happens, please let me also run after the Hushite." Joab asked him why he would run, since he has no news ready. Ahimaaz said that whatever happens, he wanted to run. Therefore, Joab told him to run. Ahimaaz ran by way of the plain, and outran the Hushite. David was sitting between the 2 gates. A guard went up to the roof over the gate, to the wall, and saw a man running alone. The guard cried out and told David. The king thought that if he was alone, there was news in his mouth. And the man came rapidly and drew near. The guard saw another man running, and the guard called to the gatekeeper and told him, "There is another man running alone." David said that he was also bringing news. The guard said the first man running was Ahimaaz, and the king called him a good man, and come with good news. Ahimaaz called out and said to the king, "All is well." Then he bowed down with his face to the earth before the king, and said, "Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delivered up the men who raised their hand against my lord the king." Ahimaaz did not say anything about the death of Absalom, which led David to ask, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Ahimaaz answered, "When Joab sent the king's servant and me your servant, I saw a great tumult, but I did not know what it was about." Ahimaaz did not give David a straight answer. Then the king said, "Turn aside and stand here." Therefore he turned aside and stood still. Just then the Cushite came, and the Cushite said, "There is good news, my lord the king. The Lord has avenged you this day of all those who rose against you." David said to the Cushite, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" The Cushite answered, "May the enemies of my lord the king, and all who rise against you to do harm, be like that young man." The Cushite told David that his son was dead. 2 Samuel 18 verses 19 to 32. Joab was told, "Behold, the king is weeping and mourning for Absalom." Therefore, the victory that day was turned into mourning for all the people. The people heard it said that day, "The king is grieved for his son." And the people stole back into the city that day, as people who were ashamed when they flee in battle and not wanting to be seen. But the king covered his face, and the king cried out with a loud voice, "O my son Absalom!" O Absalom, my son, my son. Then Joab came into the house to the king, and said, Today you have disgraced all your servants who today have saved your life, the lives of your sons and daughters, the lives of your wives and the lives of your concubines, in that you love your enemies and hate your friends. You have declared today that you regard neither princes nor servants, for today, I perceive that if Absalom had lived and all of us died today, then it would have pleased you well. Now go out and speak comfort to your servants. I swear by the Lord, if you do not go out, not one will stay with you this night. That will be worse for you than all the evil that has befallen you from your youth until now. Then King David went and sat in the gate, and it was told all the people that fled to their tent that he is sitting in the gate. Therefore all Israel came before him. 2 Samuel 19 verses 1-8. At this time, David did not know that Joab had disobeyed his command to deal gently for his sake with his son Absalom. This is the reason the people fled to their tents. They all heard the orders given to Joab, Abishai, and Ittai concerning Absalom. Joab had in his mind to disobey the king's command to kill Absalom from the start. His desire was so intent that he offered to give 10 shekels of silver and a belt to anyone who killed Absalom. Thank you for listening to Chapter 9 of the book The Kings of Israel from the book series It's All About Worship and To Whom You Worship by Doris N. Whaley Smith. The complete book in whole can be purchased on Amazon.com.